Hello, everyone popping in.
Hello.
Hi, Tamika.
Hello, how are we all?
Good.
Good. Excellent. I'm just going to give everyone a few minutes. Everyone will just sort of be popping in as we go. Thanks for jumping on, everyone who has. Did we have any trouble getting on, or all smooth?
Smooth.
All smooth? Awesome.
Okay.
That's what I like to hear. Okay, I'm just going to give it another minute or two for everyone to pop in, the latecomers. But while they're all doing that, if you just, everyone make sure that you've got a nice sort of quiet environment for the next sort of half an hour. If you've got anyone who might nag you, you can tell them to leave you alone for the next 30 minutes. Okay.
Right.
What I'm going to do is pop everybody on mute, but please, I'm going to feel free to unmute yourself at any point in the conversation. Oh, we've got a few more coming in. So you can unmute yourself at any point. I'll ask a question here or there, but otherwise you just get to, take the next half an hour out for yourself. I might have to keep letting people in as we go, but I'm just going to pop everyone on mute now. There we go. There we go. Well, welcome along tonight, everybody. It's awesome to have you all on here. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your day as well. For those of you who've just popped in, I'm just saying, suggest that you all get a nice, quiet sort of environment for the next half an hour. Make sure there's no distractions, because our goal is to be mindful tonight, isn't it? I'll just let everyone pop in there. So I know most of you, but some of you I don't, but my name is Tamika. So I work here at True North Wellness. My background is an accredited exercise physiologist, and that basically means that I'm working with people with various musculoskeletal or chronic conditions, and actually using exercise as a bit of a strategy to manage those. So for things such as cancer or osteoporosis and that sort of thing there too. Sorry, I'm just getting more people pop in if I look at the screen there as well. So I'm definitely talking with mindfulness a lot with a lot of my clients, and that's why we sort of thought it would be a really good topic for tonight as well. So, I mean, in our current climate, there's certainly a lot of different stresses for us. Some of those are just part of modern society, but certainly the last year and a half has COVID's thrown a little bit more layers into the mix there too. And so that's why we're certainly in the clinic here having a lot of conversations with people about mindfulness. But I think the past year and a half has just brought to the forefront how important our health is as well. So certainly what we're talking with people about is controlling the controllables as well. So there's a lot in the world that we can't control at the moment, but our health is one of these things, certainly. Now, we often place a lot of emphasis on our physical health. And we don't question that it takes time, and it takes regular sort of formal practice, and it takes that consistency too. So we don't tend to question that when it comes to physical health, but certainly from a mental health or a mental fitness, we like to call it, perspective, that's something that we don't tend to give as much time towards as well, even though we know just how important it is for us as well. So imagine if we place just as much emphasis on our physical health on our mental health as we do for our physical health as well there too. So I'm just letting more people in, but I'm just going to share my screen with you for a second. I always hold my breath that it works when I do this. Awesome. So you can all see my PowerPoint there?
Yep.
Awesome. I'm just going to start that slideshow. There we go. So I guess for today, it's starting to look at why this is relevant to us. Sort of, sometimes we can sort of feel like, oh, mindfulness isn't for us, or, I'm not very good at it. But what I want to emphasize today is just how it's related to just all of us as well. So we've got our autonomic nervous system. I'm going to get into the science a little bit here, but I'll try and simplify it as much as we can. So our autonomic nervous system controls those things in our body that we don't consciously do. So like our breathing and our digestion and that sort of thing. And there's two components to that. So we've got our sympathetic nervous system, which we're going to call our red zone for today. So that's our fight or flight sort of response. So when we have that, there's a release of those stress hormones like noradrenaline and cortisol, or some of them. We've probably all heard of cortisol a little bit there too. So when we're in that red zone, that sympathetic nervous system, we get an increase in our heart rate, our lung tubes widen, our muscles contract, our pupils dilate. So you can really see we're preparing for, a fight or to have to run away from something as well. So there's less ability for digestion and immune function with that as well. Okay, I'm just letting more people in as we go. So I'll just keep popping up. Awesome. So there's less ability for digestion and our immune function and that sort of thing. Now, our parasympathetic nervous system is the opposite to that. So that's our green zone. So that's where that sort of peaceful kind of calming state as well. So that side of our system works at a much slower rate. So it allows for de-stressing and sleeping soundly. Saliva production increases to allow us to digest food better as well. And that means that our heart rate drops and our muscles relax, and basically the opposite of the sympathetic nervous system there as well. So it's important to know that the red zone, so that sympathetic nervous system, is important. It's there for a reason. Prehistorically, we had to run away from lions and all sorts of things. So that's a really important thing in those situations. But it's when that is endured for a really long period of time that starts to become problematic. And that tends to be what we're dealing with in our modern society as well. So, sorry, my screen, I'm just going to pop it, there it is. So I mentioned that hormone cortisol before. I said most of us have sort of heard of that one before. So that spikes when we're stressed. So when we're in that red zone there. There is a concept called cortisol steal, which basically all our hormones are made from cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, and that normally gets kind of portioned off to make all the different hormones like estrogen, testosterone, and all those different ones. But when we're in that chronic stress state, so that's when we're in that red zone for far too long, that cortisol starts to steal from the other hormones. So you can imagine the kind of imbalances and the health consequences that can come as a result of that as well. It becomes quite problematic for our bodies as well. So our modern lives don't necessarily accommodate for this because it places us in that kind of state of chronic stress quite a lot more. So when we think about it, your body can't tell the difference between missing a mortgage payment, someone cutting you off in the traffic, or whether there's a lion chasing you. It just knows that it's stressed. And that's where, when we have all these extra stresses, that becomes really problematic for us as well. There we go. So again, that red zone over a long period of time places our immune system into a heightened response as well, a heightened state. So that's called what we know as inflammation. So chronic inflammation underpins just about every degenerative disease that we know of, including heart attack, stroke, and Alzheimer's disease. The link has also been shown for depression, gut health, and menopause. So really, that inflammation is a really big driver for a lot of different things as well. Now, just making time for yourself actually has the ability to normalize your cortisol levels. So to take us out of that red zone and more into that green zone as well. And really, why wouldn't we make time for relaxation when we know how important it is for actually weight loss? That's something that we don't often think about when we think about a weight loss program. Feelings of stress and anxiety, our ability to be resilient and cope with changes, getting to sleep and sleep quality, concentration and efficiency throughout the day, and our immune system, which I think, again, COVID has highlighted that a little bit there too, how important our immune system is as well. Now, often in my sort of clinical experience, we just don't give ourselves permission to relax. So we're going to have a try of a bit of a 5-minute breathing exercise at the moment. Just remember, there's no sort of right or wrong way of doing this. And it's okay for your mind to wander off. If you feel you can't relax, that's actually very normal too. Okay, so this is where we want to get that nice quiet zone that we've got. I want you all to get into a comfortable position. Okay, so that comfortable position might be sort of lying down, it might be sitting, just somewhere where that you're kind of undisturbed a little bit. Now you can close your eyes if you want to, but you certainly don't have to. I just want you to simply focus on your breath. So all of us breathe at different paces. So go at a pace that's right for you. just begin to kind of pay attention to that breath. I just want you to pay attention to whether you're feeling that in your chest or your belly. Now, if you're comfortable, you can start to count your breathing. So you can count 1 on an inhalation and 2 on an exhalation, or you can just breathe 1 for every inhalation. Like I said, there's really no right or wrong way of doing this. I just want you to continue with this breathing, whether you're counting or not, that's fine. And I just want you to know that it's very normal for your mind to wander off while you're doing this. And actually, you might even forget what number you got up to. So it's very important here that you don't judge yourself for this or give up. So we simply want to just acknowledge that your mind has wandered, even acknowledge the thought or the emotion that you're experiencing, and just let it go for now to allow you to continue your practice. Whenever that mind starts to wander off, just noticing it and pulling it back to the breath again. Really important not to judge yourself or feel frustrated with what your brain's going to. It's just noticing. Even if you lose count of what number you're up to, just start again. Now, for a moment, just forget about the counting if you are, and just let your mind kind of wander off wherever it wants to. Your mind's free to think about whatever it wants to right now. Now, I just want you to start to bring your mind back to the space around you, so back to the breath. Not counting, just kind of noticing what it feels like in your body. Feel kind of the chair that you're sitting on or the floor that you're lying against and the pressure that that's putting onto your body. Listen for any sounds in the room around you. Start to bring yourself back to reality. What you can do is just give your fingers or toes a little bit of a wiggle. And then when you're feeling ready, you can gently open your eyes. Okay. Just while everyone's sort of coming out of that, I'm just curious how you found that experience just then. So if anyone wants to turn their volume on and speak, you're welcome to, or that we've got the chat function in here too. So if you just click on your screen, it'll show the chat. We can have a look in there too.
I found the counting very beneficial, Tamika. I was able to concentrate more on the breathing with the counting than without counting.
Mm-hmm.
And when we stopped counting, I didn't waver away from the breathing.
Great, that's awesome, Katie.
It was good.
Yeah, good. Is that something you've tried before?
Yes, but
Yes.
my mind's always been like a silly monkey. Yes.
Yeah, no, that's really great that you found that beneficial from that side of things.
Maybe I'm super tired tonight.
Maybe that's the case too. Good. Does anyone else want to share how that was for them? Even if you don't want to talk here, well, you can just write in the chat sort of how you were feeling there.
I sort of concentrated better when I was counting rather than when I was counting my breaths.
Mm-hmm.
So if I stop counting, I'm looking for the keys that I'm looking for.
Okay.
So while I was counting, I was concentrating better. As soon as I stopped counting, I'm looking in the trees trying to find my keys. So the counting worked for me.
Yeah, so the counting worked. Yeah, absolutely. Good. So we've got some other people popping some things in. So when I stopped counting, I felt more present in the room. So actually the stopping the counting was beneficial there by the sounds of things. Yeah. Very relaxed, good to slow down. And I think we often, like I said at the start, don't give ourselves that permission to slow down either.
I turned it
Rodney, yeah.
Like 10 times.
What was that, sorry?
I said I tended to wander off and had to restart the counting quite a lot.
Quite a lot, that's okay. And that's actually, I think that's when we start to think that, oh, maybe this isn't for me, or, I just find it really hard, but it's actually a really normal part of it. We've got a lot going on in these heads of ours, so it's very normal for them to kind of wander off. And it's really good that you kind of just acknowledged that, but didn't judge yourself for it. You just sort of drew your attention back to what you were doing too. And that's really an important part. We've got another comment here. Yeah, sorry. Hey, Jessa.
It's Jessa. Hi. I was just gonna say, when the breeze behind me, that's in my open window, started coming through, it distracted me from the counting, and it sort of made me restarting made me sort of bring myself back to what I was doing, back to the present. It was kind of odd because it was the breeze that distracted me. So I was like, oh, better close that window or something. But yeah, it was good.
Is the breeze something you think you would have noticed without it?
Probably not. If I wasn't concentrating on the counting, I probably would not have noticed that there's a breeze coming through the window. I would have just gone on with what I was doing anyway, because this is usually my workspace. And I probably would not have noticed it when I was counting. Cool.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Absolutely. No, thanks for sharing. Absolutely. And it's a really great example that we often do start to, you might become hyper aware of other things around you that you didn't notice before too. And again, it's just kind of shifting that focus back to, what the task is too. So I've got some other awesome comments in here. So tried to let my mind go, but still had trouble letting go. So lost count after 5 breaths and then couldn't get back to counting, but did almost fall asleep. So there you go. So that's another, it can be quite challenging. And I think when we think about like doing a marathon, say, we don't, we know that it takes time to build up to that. You don't expect to just go for a few big runs and then suddenly you can do it. So we think about our physical fitness quite a lot like that, but we don't actually often do that when it comes to our mental fitness as well. So it actually takes time and practice to train our body too. And just remembering that there's no right or wrong way of doing it. So you might find that the counting was really beneficial to stop you from thinking about the things you were thinking about. But maybe the counting was distracting to some of you as well. And that's completely okay as well. So we've got some more comments. Very relaxing. Counting made my breathing slower and cleared my mind. So there's another counting. Started to fall asleep when we were allowed to let our mind wander. Had no idea what to think. Had a mild, quick panic. So, you know, it's again, that just shows how, you know, much clearer that person's thoughts were with what we're doing there as well. No, but that's great, everyone. Thanks for sharing that as well. And I think it's really quite common to feel a tendency to kind of perfect what we're doing and do it right with this sort of thing as well. But if your mind wandered off or you lost count during that activity, you might have even felt a little bit frustrated at yourself. And again, that's quite normal as well. I just want to emphasize that that's really natural, and it's just important not to judge yourself when you're doing that as well. So our goal isn't to attain some perfect state of mind or anything. That's not what mindfulness is about. It's actually just about, you know, being present and acknowledging all those things that and just kind of letting them flow, I guess, so to speak, as well. And it's also important that sometimes the thoughts that we experience during meditation or mindfulness might not actually be very pleasant. And that's actually okay if they're not pleasant, if they're unpleasant as well. So sometimes that can just be unavoidable. And again, we just simply notice what's sort of going on and kind of, you know, let the thoughts flow without trying to stop them as well. What we have to practice is not getting too involved in these thoughts as well. So like I said at the start, we often place that emphasis on our physical fitness, but we just don't do the same for our mental fitness. So we know that it needs time. We need to build up with it. We need to start small and build up. And we know that we need to do it regularly in order to get the benefits out of it as well. So that's really great there. Has anyone done mindfulness before? You know, or has anyone sort of heard a little bit about it? I'm keen to sort of hear where you guys are at with it at the moment. Does anyone want to share? Throwing you all on the spot a little bit.
I did a mindfulness course through Karuna Hospice earlier on in the year with a Buddhist nun, and that was beautiful. That was beautiful. But I found that I since then I haven't made the time to practice it. And that's the essence. You've got to find the time to do it. So I'm hoping that you're going to stimulate me again to find the time.
Absolutely. And, you know, that is a really common problem, Katie, actually. I'm just going to share back with my screen with you all again. Okay, so some things that we can do. So if we all brainstorm a little bit, what are some things we could do to make that practice a little bit more regular and consistent? Anyone want to fire away with any suggestions?
I guess set a regular time, even if it's just 5 or 10 minutes, just a time in the day that you set aside to relax and concentrate on your breathing and nothing else.
Yeah. So actually setting that regular time, Jill, yeah, that's really good. Yeah, certainly. And that actually helps our body establish, kind of get an association for it. So first thing in the morning or last thing at night can be a really good thing, because your body kind of goes, all right, I'm ready for my meditation or mindfulness now as well. And just doing it consistently at that time reinforces that habit. And we all know how we are creatures of habit as well, that sort of thing. Awesome. Does anyone else have any suggestions?
Hi guys, it's me again.
Hello.
When I first came to True North Wellness, I was very, very unwell. So long story short, one of my other health professionals that's helped me, she gave me, in this journey, she gave me a list of 50 things that is a list that we made together. It's for Jessa time. So every week I set aside about 2 hours that is just for Jessa, and no one else is allowed in that 2-hour space. And I do some things from that list. In one of that list, like again, long story short, she got me to try and find this Star Wars cafe in the city without the help of Google. So I had a general direction of where it was in Queen Street Mall, and it was to look for it without a map. So I had to open my eyes and be in the moment and find this coffee shop, and I did, and that was cool. So I think I've done 15 out of that 50. So I'm getting there.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Jessa. So that's really good that that's come from, you know, a health professional as well, that someone that's kind of acknowledged that that's something that you need to work on too. Yeah, certainly. Yeah. No, that's really good. Okay, if we have a bit of a look at some other things that we can do to establish we've got Trish said, setting reminders on your phone to stop and breathe and become aware of your breath and the environment. Become present for a short amount of time, maybe every couple of hours. So actually, you know, doing that regularly. And that's a really good idea as well. You know, there's no right or wrong way of doing it. You don't have to set aside half an hour at a time. It's just, you know, associating things that you're doing every now and then with that as well. So good. So again, we had doing it at the same time every day, which Jill said, which is awesome. So it just allows that formation of a habit. Using the same room or space every time as well can be really good, because that your body actually begins to associate that with what you're doing as well. Telling others that you don't want to be disturbed. So it's much easier to switch off when you know that no one in your family is going to interrupt you while you're doing it as well, because that can sort of play in the back of your mind a little bit as well. And the other thing is being kind to yourself, because some days are going to be harder than others. And you certainly don't have to perfect what we're doing as well. So to make the task as easy as possible to complete will be the thing that helps you do it consistently. So when you think about all these things that we're talking about, it all comes down to just making it easier to remember, really. And there's no right or wrong way of doing that. That's going to look different for each of us as well. Good. Okay, we're going to move on there. We're looking at some considerations for managing pain as well, because, you know, when we're experiencing high level pain, that can actually make it feel really challenging to do this sort of thing. And this may be the last sort of thing you think about, but we actually know that it's really beneficial. So there's been studies that have been done about how mindfulness impacts our pain intensity and also someone's perception of pain. So the challenge with this is that everyone's pain is different and it's influenced by lots of different factors. So no two people have the same kind of pain. The research tells us that we may not be able to cure the pain, but the mindfulness can actually help change how you feel about your pain and your experience in life. It's teaching someone to change their relationship with pain and their reaction to it as well. So when we think we've got chronic pain, like we said earlier, that means chronic inflammation, which actually means we're in that red zone that we talked about at the start. So using mindfulness can help to reduce that inflammation and the pain sensitivity around that as well. But the thing with pain is that it demands attention. So, you know, our body's always going to focus on that area of pain as well. The mindfulness actually allows you to observe that without getting too involved in that as well. And actually, Mel, our massage therapist, has also talked about some different ways that you can do sort of self-massage or kind of tapping on yourself too, to help take that attention away from that painful area as well, which there's, you know, that's a whole nother ball game as well, but that's a really interesting area too, certainly. So I mentioned earlier, you know, in our current climate, we talk about controlling the controllables. So with pain, that can actually be a really valuable thing, is because it empowers the person, you know, going through pain to be able to do something that, you know, contributes and helps them. So they can't change, they may not be able to change the pain itself, but they can actually change what they're doing about that. And that's really empowering there too. Okay, if we just move on, we're also thinking about anxiety. So having feelings of anxiety or feeling anxious may make meditation and mindfulness more challenging, but we know that these strategies are even more important to manage these feelings. So mindfulness can calm those anxious feelings by staying with the difficult feelings without trying to analyze or suppress or even encourage them. And that can actually help them to disappear as well. So it also allows you to explore the underlying cause of your stress and worry. So by going with it rather than fighting it, you actually give an opportunity to gain insight into what's driving your concerns as well. And again, it's creating space around your worries so that they don't consume you. So it comes through developing the understanding which actually allows a sense of freedom from them. So it's about not trying to change those anxious thoughts, but just kind of going with them, which actually helps to reduce the anxiety as well. So when we think about an anxious state, it's that increase in cortisol that we get, which places us in that red zone, and the mindfulness can help kind of restore that green zone as well. The other really important thing, both with pain and anxiety as well, is that allowing negative emotions and experiences to exist for a moment doesn't necessarily mean that we've chosen not to take action. And I think that's really important. So accepting the negative mindset can actually help you work through that experience rather than sort of trying to suppress it as well. Just going to click on to the next one there. So if we think about sleep as well, because that again is something that makes it quite challenging. Sleep's really important for our overall health. And we know for a fact that meditation and mindfulness can help with that. So there are some things that we can do to help with sleep from a mindfulness point of view. First one is to do it daily. So you help get into that routine, like with, say exercise, we know we need to do it quite consistently. And with sleep, with meditation, we know that we need to do that consistently as well, so that our body begins to associate when it's actually time for sleep. Practicing out of bed can be a good option. So we want to try and minimize staying awake in bed for longer than 20 minutes. So if you're someone that, does have trouble with that, it's actually better to go off and do that in a different room, because your body stops associating lying in bed with being unable to sleep. And then when you feel tired, you can go back to bed, and it associates bed with sleeping. The other thing is try not to force it. So we all might have lay there and let the worries kind of take over, and we try and force ourselves into sleep, but we actually just want to, again, not get involved in them. So we're noticing them and we kind of visualize them sort of floating away and moving past us without trying to change the thoughts that we're having as well. Minimizing the use of devices, even sleep apps, because the reason for that is because the blue light actually that comes from the screens, even with just a simple flash, that actually increases your alertness and reduces the hormone melatonin, which we actually need to sleep. So that's where some different strategies like the breathing, for example, that we tried today can be really useful for that as well. And then thinking, if anxiety is what's keeping you up, thinking about those earlier considerations about the anxiety as well. Does anyone have any questions or comments so far at this point? I'm just having a bit of a look at the chat here. Set reminders on your phone to stop. Is taking sleeping tablets classified as forcing it as well? So no, sleeping tablets will come under, they might help you get to sleep, but they don't necessarily help the quality of your sleep as well. So that's where the mindfulness actually can go kind of hand in hand if you are taking sleeping tablets as well, because it helps to reduce that, the restorative kind of deep sleep and improve the quality of that too. So that's a really good question there. Okay, no other questions at this point by the looks of things. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about the formal things we can do for mindfulness. So that's where we're sort of deliberately doing a bit of a practice, but there's also informal ways that we can do that as well. So some examples here. So we think of it as me time, and these are the things I think we often consider a bit of a luxury. So things like having a bath or reading a book or a magazine, going for a walk, singing or playing or listening to music, gardening, cooking, painting, dancing. Adult colouring books can be a great source of mindfulness. Yoga and Tai Chi, another sort of restorative exercise. And then even something like eating dinner with the family without devices as well. So just thinking about those, they give us a really good example of being mindful as well. If we think about kids doing these tasks, they give us a pretty good example of that. They often aren't paying attention to what we're saying to them. They can be completely fully immersed in a task. And I think what we tend to do is try and multitask a little bit too much. So how often do we multitask while sort of going for a walk? When, if you think about the experience of going for a walk, could be very different if you actually paid attention to, what that felt like. How did your body feel? What does it actually feel like to have your feet hit the pavement as you're walking? What sounds can you hear around you? What does the sky look like? All those different things can make that a very different experience than what it does when we're, on the phone or texting or that sort of thing while we're walking as well. So there's really just no rules around that. So you just need to pick something you like, and start doing it. So if you can see anything on that list that you like to do, we want to try and intentionally bring that in with what we're doing. You just simply need to pay attention while you're doing it. Remember that most of us actually haven't been mindful in a long time. You know, maybe here and there little bits, but we haven't deliberately done that for even years sometimes. So it's going to take a little bit of practice. So it just means we need to start small and build up, just like everything else too. So you can practice stillness and breathing at any point during the day, even if you're on public transport or you're waiting for a coffee or that sort of thing, even waiting for the jug to boil at home. Just even taking the time to focus on your breathing in itself, as we just experienced, can really have those profound effects. Even just simply trying to make your exhalation a little bit longer than your inhalation, that actually stimulates our green zone, that parasympathetic nervous system that allows us to relax. So that can be even something you just concentrate on your breathing, concentrating on making that exhalation that little bit longer as well. And again, we think of the marathon. We wouldn't try and do it all in one go. We'd try and build up gradually over time. And the same goes for that, for our mindfulness practice as well. Now, one thing that we do on a daily basis is we eat. So mindfulness can also be brought into our eating practice. So I've got Louise, our dietitian. She's very experienced in this area and has kindly joined us today to talk a little bit about mindful eating. So if you're there, Louise, you can fire away.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yep, all good.
Perfect. Okay, cool. Well, firstly, Tamika, that was amazing. Thank you very much. I know there's a couple of people online who I see in clinic, so really nice to see you guys all here tonight. And you'd know that I do talk about mindfulness and stress a lot myself as well. So it's clearly something that is so important to all areas of our health. So thank you, Tamika, for taking the time to really take us through the detail of that. I think it was really, really interesting. I wish I had the time to do that with everybody that I see. So one area that we can also bring mindfulness to is to our eating habits. So I don't want to take up a lot of time tonight, but I do just want to run you guys through a quick little activity. So I'm just going to ask everybody now if you can go and find for yourselves something to eat. So just take a minute. The best thing that you can have is just a simple food by itself. So examples would be like in your pantry, if you have some peanut butter or a sultana or some dried fruit, or even like a strawberry or blueberry or something like that in your fridge, a piece of cheese. No fancy sandwiches or leftovers or anything like that. We're just looking for something that's a nice, simple flavor. So if everybody wants to go and just take a minute to do that, it doesn't have to be big. We're just going to have one bite. My example, can everyone see my screen? I have a piece of chocolate here. So just something nice and simple, just a single flavor by itself, really. So yeah, everyone go do that now. We'll just wait a minute and then we'll get started again. Tamika, if you turn off the presentation, then I think I can see when people are back. Yeah, great. Thank you. Okay. So we'll just wait for a second while people go and do that, and then I'll get stuck into it.
I bet we weren't all expecting to be able to go and get something to eat while we were doing this tonight.
Yeah, I've probably thrown a bit of a spanner in the works there.
Yeah.
You get a presentation and dinner.
Yeah. Awesome. Great to see people finding things there.
Yeah, and there's no right or wrong, I should say here. It's that same concept that Tamika was talking about. So it doesn't really matter what it is, just, you know, anything that is food and that you can eat is perfectly fine. So no right or wrong, just whatever you kind of have handy, because I've kind of sprung it on people. Okay, I think it looks like most people are coming back. I'm just going to give it a little minute in case some people with their screens off aren't back yet.
I think we're good to go.
Good to go? Okay, cool. So essentially we're just going to do a little mindful eating activity that you can do same as the mindful breathing, I suppose, at any point that you are eating something. It's worth thinking about why you do mindful eating. And it's not a strategy that we use to try and reduce the calories that we're eating. It's not a diet. It's nothing like that. It's more about intuitive eating and trying to get you back in touch with your body. So the same way that the breathing is trying to get you back in touch with your body, it's about getting you recognizing what response your body is having to what you're eating. And by doing that, I think we can be a little bit more in tune with what our bodies actually need. I know I'm certainly guilty of eating in front of screens. It's kind of like a guilty pleasure. But when we do things like that, we're not really listening to the signals that our body is sending us. And so that means we'll often keep eating well past the point where we're no longer enjoying food or we're not hungry anymore. So mindful eating, I guess, is about bringing you back to be able to try and recognize when you are actually full or not full and enjoying the food. Okay, excuse me, sorry. So what we're going to do is just run through the 5 senses with our food. So I want everyone to start just by correcting their posture and taking a big breath. So we're just going to sit up nice and straight and take a nice big breath in and out. So we're just recentering ourselves. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to look at the piece of food that you've chosen and you're just going to see, what can you see about it? So we are observing. Again, no right or wrong, we're just looking. When you look at it, notice kind of what your response to it is. So are you excited about eating this food? Are you a bit like, meh? Maybe you had dinner and you're not really hungry. You're like, she's forcing me to eat some more food. Or maybe you haven't had dinner and you're thinking, oh God, hurry up so I can just get to it. But just kind of looking at the food and, you know, does the sight of it excite you or not? You're probably already doing number 2, but if you're not, number 2 is to touch it. So pick it up and feel it. Notice things like, what texture does it have? Is it squishy? Sorry if you picked peanut butter, but you know, just trying to experience the food through all the different senses. Number 3 is smelling it. So just literally picking it up. What can you smell? That's a good opportunity to do a nice deep breath in and out again. That leads us on, I think, we are kind of noticing what we can smell, because smell is such an important part of taste. So with your taste, which we'll get to, you've got those 5 senses of the sweet, the salty, the bitter, the savoury, and the sour. But the smell is what brings all those different nuances into it. So it's a really important one to acknowledge. Number 4 is listen. So yeah, you're going to listen to your food. So maybe it's in a wrapper and it's a little bit crinkly. Maybe it makes a bit of a sound. But as well as listening to the food, I want you to actually listen to your body as well. So this is the point where you ask yourself, what response am I getting to this food that I'm looking at, touching, smelling? Is it making my mouth water? That's a common one, I think, when you start to look at food and you take your time with it. Am I noticing any other sort of sensation changes within my body? Just like, what am I feeling about this food right now? Listening to what your body's telling you. Okay, so you don't have to do this bit now, but if you want to, now is where we would close our eyes. So closing your eyes down, and what we're trying to do is just shut down, I suppose, some of the other senses so that we can focus on the taste a little bit more. And if you're comfortable with doing it, now you can actually put the food into your mouth. So I don't want you to chew it straight away. I just want you to put it into your mouth and just see what kind of response you get. So same as with the breathing, there's no right, there's no wrong. It's just about acknowledgement. So, you know, feeling whatever kind of comes into your head, whatever thoughts, whatever feelings, and just kind of acknowledging this is the response that my body has to this particular food. And when you're ready to, you can maybe chew it a couple of times. If it's a food that you can do that too, it depends on what you've chosen. But you can start to just kind of chew it slowly and eat it slowly now. So I'll just give you guys a moment to do that. What we're really trying to do is slow it down and just see what we can experience out of this bite of food. So a few things that we're kind of thinking about as we're doing this. What flavour are you getting from the food? Are you getting more than one flavour? And does maybe the taste changes? So when you first put it into your mouth, it tasted like something and that's changed as it's kind of like softened. Have a think about what the mouth feel is. How does it feel in your mouth? What's the texture like? Has that changed? Keep thinking about that as you keep eating it. And if you're ready to, you can finish and swallow it now. So just have a bit of again, noticing how that feels as you swallow it. And if we're all done, we can open our eyes and just have a little bit of a think about how that made us feel. So I guess if people would like to contribute either on the chat or if they want to chip in, some questions I'll ask for you guys to think about. How did the taste change over time? How did the food make you feel? How did you feel when you started slowing down? Because I'm imagining that's pretty different to how you would normally eat something. So if anybody wants to sort of jump in with what their experience was on that, couple on the chat.
I had a strawberry.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize it was so noisy.
That's a great one.
It's got little tiny little black pips in it.
Yeah.
And I've never really noticed that before. I've just wolfed them down.
Yeah. I think it's great. I've never noticed that strawberries are noisy either. So that is a great example of something that you don't notice until you really start to focus in on that particular experience. So that's a great one.
Thank you.
Anybody else notice something that they wouldn't normally notice? The change in the flavor. That's actually quite interesting because, yeah, I've never even think about it. You just grab food and you eat it and that's cool. But stopping to chew, because I usually just gulp my food down, I guess. Actually chewing, feeling that texture. So my strawberry went from being sweet to there's actually an acidic note to it. I didn't notice that towards the end when it was a little bit more chewed, I guess. There's an acidic taste to it. Yeah.
I think it's just fascinating what we can notice about our food when we take the time to slow down and really not just taste it, because there's so many other aspects to it as we've just talked about, but when we use our 5 senses to really experience it and just take note of how we respond to that, I think that's so important. So that note on the taste changing, taste can change within the mouthful, but it will also change throughout the meal. So if you're eating something that you really enjoy, like a piece of chocolate, if you eat enough chocolate and you do it mindfully, there comes a point where your body will not have the same response to it anymore. And that's your body's natural way of saying, I've had enough. But we don't listen to it, I would say, 95% of the time. Don't listen, we just keep going. So it's a really useful strategy, I suppose, just to bring into your eating. You don't need to do every bite like that. It would take us a really, really long time. But even just having one mindful bite, start, middle, or end of the meal, wherever you choose, but just taking that one bite to really tune into everything, it can completely change your experience of the meal. Hopefully increase your enjoyment of the meal and just, I guess, getting you a little bit more in tune with your body and what your response to that food is. So I hope that activity was useful to people. It doesn't matter what food you chose because it works no matter what you're eating. You can do it with any meal, any food. I do find it easier when it's a simple flavor, because when it's a very complex meal like a sandwich or a pasta or something, there's lots of flavors to work through. But with practice, you can get to that point. And I think it's, again, to reiterate what Tamika was saying, it does come down to practice. Mindful eating is difficult to do for an entire meal or for every meal, but if we just start to incorporate it into our practice every now and again, so one bite once a day, and it becomes something that you get familiar with doing, and it becomes a lot easier.
I think it makes you realize how much you eat without being mindful of that too. Yeah, definitely. So thank you for that, Louise. That was really awesome. Hopefully you're all enjoying that last little bit of food that you just had there as well. Awesome. Well, that sort of comes to a bit of the end of what we're talking about today. So I hope that you've all kind of maybe identified that, yes, mindfulness is for me, it's actually for all of us, but just that it looks a little bit different for each of us as well. And that there's certainly no right or wrong way of doing it as well. Knowing that it can be something formal, like actually concentrating on your breathing. I mean, there's a number of different activities we could have done for that 5 minutes today, but just noticing how different that makes you feel the challenge is that we often know how good it makes us feel, but we just don't put the time into doing it as well. So I'd encourage you all to sort of start small and, you know, build up as well, whether it's your mindful bite or whether it's picking something that you're already doing throughout the day and really concentrating on that as well. So many different ways that it can kind of be applied to our lives as well. I just want to open the floor to any sort of questions that people might have from the presentation tonight. And while I'm just getting that, I'm actually going to post a link into the chat here, which actually is a little bit of a feedback form. So if you just click on it, it'll just ask you a few questions on some other topics that you're actually interested in, so that when we do these in the future, we sort of know what people are interested in. And then also whether you'd be interested in sort of exploring this topic a little bit further too. So while we're doing that, just to confirm that there's no questions or comments that anyone has that they would like to share. We all must be a bunch of happy chappies, I think, which is great. So
thoroughly
yes.
enjoyed it. Thank you, Tamika.
Thank you, Katie. Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much. Carol's done a little thumbs up there. Very nifty. Thank you as well. Awesome. Well, if you could take the time, Trisha's asked, will you run more sessions like this? We are certainly looking at it. This was a bit of a trial. We're certainly focusing on mindfulness a lot in the clinic. We're even considering exploring kind of the virtual side of things with that, because it's a really, I mean, you can be at home and do it as well. So certainly open to any feedback on whether people are interested in that sort of thing as well. But certainly we're open to other topics too, that we don't want to do topics on things that you're not interested in at the same time too. So if you could take the time to fill in the form or pop some feedback to us another way. This actually has been recorded, so we will email that out to all of you in case you'd like to have a bit of a look at it again. And I'll also, in that email, will send out the link to that form if you don't quite catch it tonight as well. So I just want to really say thanks so much, everyone, for joining us this Tuesday evening, and I really hope you got something out of it.
Thank you, Tamika.
I did. Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone. Have a lovely night.
Thank you.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Tamika.
Thanks so much, guys. I'm just going to pause here for a moment while if there's any questions. Awesome. See you later, guys. Thank you.